The Voice of Russia World Service offers you another edition of Voice of Russia Treasure Store. This year, music lovers in Russia celebrate on a broad scale the 80th birth anniversary of a wonderful Russian singer and pedagogue, Галина Карева, who died in 1990.
Должны. Я просто готова, но об этом ни слова. Молчи, молчи.
That was an excerpt from the operetta by Jacques Offenbach, Pericola, performed by Галина Карева, People's Artist of Russia. Here is yet another of her musical visiting cards. You are listening to the aria of Zibel from the opera by Gounod, Faust, performed by Галина Карева. Recently, a book came off the print which gathered together on its pages assorted recollections of Kareva's colleagues, artists and musicians, as well as her friends and fans. The title of the book is Галина Карева, a singer of Russia. The author of the book is the singer's younger sister Lydia. Today, we would like to offer you some excerpts from this book, complete with musical illustrations to them. Галина Карева was born in the village of Mais, Penza region in central Russia. However, she spent the majority of her life in Moscow. She left the capital quite often to go on tours and when invited to work for a spell in opera theatres of other towns of this country. Thus, she worked for 18 years at the celebrated Mariinsky Theatre of St. Petersburg. A person of many talents, Галина Карева tried her hand at several occupations until she finally decided to become a singer. Thus, during the Second World War, when she was 15, she worked as a nurse at a hospital. She excelled in this so much that the doctors all predicted a medical career for her and insisted on supplying her with recommendations for entering medical college. But Galina dreamt of becoming a drama actress. Since childhood she participated in amateur theatricals, sang and danced, After finishing her secondary education, she attempted to enter, in succession, 2 of Moscow's theatrical educational establishments. However, she did not pass the competition. The stress she went through in the process led to stammer, which the medics suggested she dealt with through singing. Then it transpired she possessed a good singing voice. At her father's advice, she applied for audition at several musical educational establishments. At 3 of them she failed. However, the 4th, the Mikhail Ippolitov-Ivanov Musical College, enrolled her. Later, she wrote in her autobiography,
"They enrolled me in the class of pedagogue Anna Chumakova-Korsova, pupil of the famed Italian pedagogue Umberto Mazzetti. Now it seems to me that all my previous failures were predestined, and that I was meant to arrive the way I was in the class of this wonderful pedagogue. I thank fate that it brought so many obstacles in my path to lead me up to the sole thing I needed, and as a result of which I acquired what I had dreamt of since childhood, and what was to form the essential purpose of my very life and its prime source of joy."
Галина Карева, with an excerpt from a rarely performed romance by Georges Bizet, Arabian woman bidding farewell to the foreign guest. We continue our narrative. Studies at the musical college were gratis, as were at all Soviet state educational facilities. However, the graduates were required to work 3 years wherever the state sent them. Galina was appointed to the Department of Music Ensemble of one of Moscow's concert organizations. Despite her academic music education, she found herself in a jazz outfit. What made the culture officials take so illogical a decision is hard to say. Galina was not upset. In fact, she was quite happy with the turn of events. She knew and loved jazz, and it was intriguing for her to try her hand in this genre too. The ensemble she found herself in was very popular with the youth. It performed in cinemas, restaurants, at dance venues, and the leader of the ensemble, widely known jazz musician Alexander Osnovikov, became Galina's husband and later the father of her son. Thanks to jazz, Galina developed her sense of rhythm and other invaluable stage skills that served her in good stead later in the opera theatre. However, her affair with jazz turned out to be a brief one. Disappointed, Galina wrote in her autobiography,
In jazz, I received my share of praise, but I was certainly no Ella Fitzgerald, and I was not ready to be a mediocrity either. Most importantly, to sing jazz, I needed to forget my academic training, in other words, turn my back on 4 years of music college, disappoint the cherished hopes of my pedagogue and my own of becoming a true opera vocalist instead of just a singer of artless songs. I set off to try my luck at the Bolshoi Theatre, where at the time they had announced an audition for the role of Elena Bezukhova in Sergei Prokofiev's opera War and Peace. I passed the audition and was taken on. They wrote me as a pass to the Bolshoi Theatre, and I worked on the part of Ellen, listened to different productions and attended rehearsals. I recall how I walked across the stage of the Bolshoi for the first time, the stage that great masters and celebrities of Russian and foreign opera had sung on. When I reached the footlights, I felt so overwhelmed by a wave of excitement, I barely noticed how I walked right into the stage scenery. A blow on my head finally brought me to my senses.
For around a year, Galina attended the Bolshoi Theatre, but the leadership changed and the production of War and Peace was postponed indefinitely. Since there were no other offers at the theatre, Galina went to try her luck at Moscow's Philharmonic Society. She had no trouble passing the entrance auditions there, and thus became a soloist of Moscow's Philharmonic. She began her fascinating concert career, with numerous tours taking her all across the Soviet Union. Everywhere she went, she enjoyed tremendous success. All went extremely well. And still, she longed to sing in an opera theatre. Then she had a stroke of good fortune. Once on business at the Ministry of Culture, she found herself at a meeting of directors of provincial opera theatres. And at that meeting, she was asked to sing something. Luckily, she had some sheet music with her, and so she sang. This was the aria of Lyubasha from the opera by Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov, The Tsar's Bride. Galina produced a very strong impression on the opera theatre directors, and she was immediately offered employment in several towns. She accepted the invitation from the Kuybyshev Theatre of Opera and Ballet, presently the town is called Samara, on the River Volga. Telling about her work at that theatre in one radio program, Галина Карева said,
Свою артистическую деятельность я начала со спектакля «Пиковая дама» партии Полины в этой опере.
I started my stage career there with a part of Polina in a production of Queen of Spades by Tchaikovsky. This was my first production, and the romance of Polina remains to this day my favorite romance.
And now let's listen to an excerpt from this romance. In the time she spent at Kuibyshev Theatre of Opera and Ballet, Galina Kareva sang all the leading parts of the mezzo-soprano repertoire. However, this is what we can read in her autobiography.
I very much liked working at the Kuibyshev Theatre of Opera and Ballet. The company was excellent, all the people pleasant. No intrigues, sheer goodwill. I worked with pleasure and enthusiasm, enjoyed success, and the press lavished praise on me. I began preparing a solo concert. Everything was fine, but for the small wages, half of which went towards paying the rent. There was no time left for doing outside work to supplement my earnings, and I felt financially in dire straits and desperately needed to find something else.
Her searchings led her to St. Petersburg, the Kirov Academic Theatre of Opera and Ballet in pre-Soviet times, and today this is the Mariinsky Theatre. The theatre director answered her on the phone saying, "Come on over for an audition," and she went there and sang the aria of Amneris from the opera by Verdi, Aida. They liked what they heard and then took her on, and that is how she joined the company of the famed theatre. Galina Kareva was entrusted with all lead parts of the mezzo-soprano repertoire. As one newspaper later wrote, she didn't waste time in ascending to the musical Olympus. She flew straight to the top. She straight away claimed her own following of fans. Opera lovers would arrive for productions she was involved in from all towns of the country, Moscow included. A celebrated impresario from the USA, Solomon Urok, was most impressed with Galina's singing and offered her tours across the USA. However, the theatre directorship at the time did not grant Kareva permission to go abroad. Many believed that Kareva's most successful part was that of Carmen in the eponymous opera by Georges Bizet. The singer said the following about this composer in one radio interview.
Творчество французского композитора Жоржа Бизе мне особенно близко, дорого. Это мой самый любимый композитор.
I find that I can particularly relate to the art of the French composer Georges Bizet, says Galina Kareva. This is my favorite composer, since for many years on the stage of the Kirov Opera and Ballet Theatre, I sang the part of Carmen.
Let's listen to Habanera from the opera Carmen, sung by Galina Kareva.
Вас когда полюблю, сама не знаю я, вернее, никогда. Или завтра, может быть, сегодня же нет, ни за что. Крылья нельзя никак поймать. Тщетны были бы все усилия, и крыльев ей нам не связать. Все пустяк и мольбы и слезы, иль красноречия томный вид, безответная на угрозы, куда ей вздумалось летит. Любовь, 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 любовь свободна, век кочуя, закон всех она сильней. Меня не любишь, но люблю я, так берегись любви моей. Меня не любишь ты, так что ж зато тебя люблю я. Тебя люблю я, берегись любви моей. расцвела и в облака. От тебя она вновь умчалась, не ждешь ее, но здесь она близ тебя, вот она порхает вокруг далеко, там любовь, поспеши к ней, но летает, гони ее, она здесь вновь. Любовь, 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 любовь свободна века чуя, законов всех она сильней. Меня не любишь, но люблю я, так бойся ты любви моей. Меня не любишь ты, так что ж, зато тебя люблю я. Тебя люблю я и заставлю себя.
Besides her opera repertoire, ever since her Moscow stint, Галина Карева had a chamber one, which she continued to augment while working at the Kirov Theatre. Her solo concert programs were always remarkably varied. Thus, a concert of foreign classical music, Verdi, Bizet, Grieg, Liszt, Sibelius, Minushko, Ponsis and Son, a concert of virtuosi music by Rossini, Meyerbeer, Gounod, an evening of organ music with vocal compositions by Bach, Handel, Giordani, Pergolesi, Mozart. She also appeared with concerts of Russian classics as well as old Russian romances. However, all was not that easy with the latter. The Culture Ministry officials were even alert for anything that violated the accepted Soviet ideological norms. So the genre of old Russian romance was frowned upon as a leftover of the despicable bourgeois past. They even went so far as to ban the performance of the romances. However, Галина Карева, with her strong character and resilience, managed to break through the wall of taboo in regard to the Russian romance, so dearly loved by the people. As to how she managed to succeed in this, tune in to listen to the continuation, our narrative, in the following edition, same time, next week. And there we end another edition of Voice of Russia Treasure Store. It was directed by Vladimir Dermin, author and music editor Tatiana Shvetsova, sound engineer Nadezhda Smirnova, and your hosts Pavel Novichkov
and Svetlana Yakimenko. We wish you all the very best.
The Voice of Russia World Service presents another edition of Voice of Russia Treasure Store. We continue our narrative about wonderful Russian vocalist and pedagogue, people's artist of Russia, Galina Kareva. This year, music lovers in Russia widely marked the 80th birth anniversary of this remarkable singer, who died in 1990. In connection with this anniversary, a book came off the print entitled Galina Kareva, Singer of Russia. The book offers recollections of her colleagues, artists and musicians, as well as friends and fans. The author of the book is the singer's younger sister, Lydia. Today we shall acquaint you with excerpts from the book, augmented by musical illustrations. You are listening to a romance written by Russian composer Mikhail Glinka, Throw Not Temptation in My Way, sung by people's artist of Russia, Galina Kareva. In our previous program, we told you how the artist began her music career, how life's circumstances brought her to Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, to the celebrated Mariinsky Theatre, which in Soviet times was called the Kirov Theatre of Opera and Ballet. Today we shall tell you how Galina Kareva managed to breathe new life into the genre of old Russian romance, which in Soviet times was frowned upon as a lingering remnant of the bourgeois past. The old Russian romance was even under a ban for some time, yet, with her strong character and combative spirit, Galina Kareva had no intention of knuckling under. In one radio interview she said,
Русские романсы я стала петь очень давно, еще работая в опере в Куйбышеве. И вот с тех пор я уже спела более 200 романсов.
I started singing Russian romances a long time ago, when I was still working at the Opera Theatre of Kuybyshev, says Galina Kareva. Since that time, I have sung over 200 romances, and with every passing year, I grow convinced that the genre is enlisting ever new fans. With the years, the audiences at such concerts do not decrease, quite the opposite. I would even say that the audience grows younger. A great many students come to evenings of Russian romance, and I'm very happy that the genre has such a following. It is an ancient genre, at one time chiefly adopted for at-home music making, and that explains why it turned out so profoundly soulful and even, I would say, intimate.
Before we continue our narrative, let's hear an old Russian romance by Boris Borisov to the lyrics of Yelizaveta Dieterich's Stars in the Sky.
I dreamt of a garden in wedding finery. We were in that garden together. Stars in the sky, stars in the sea. There are stars in my heart as well.
Снился мне сад в подвенечном уборе. В этом саду мы с тобою вдвоем. Звезды на небе, звезды на море. Я жадно ловлю взоры глубокие, уста молчаливы. Милый, о милый,
Галине Каревой wrote in her autobiography,
For many years I've been balancing concert and opera work, and in fact to this day I cannot say which I prefer. I love them both. However, as chamber singer, I have an opportunity to meet up with my listeners one-on-one, so to say. And I'm greatly aware of the reaction of the audience hall to me alone, since in an opera production I am obliged to share the attention of the listeners with my partners on stage. Somewhere in the deep recesses of my soul, I think I love concerts more. At the Kirov Opera Theatre on Mondays, there were concerts in which I also participated, usually performing something classical, and then a romance. The directorship of the theatre noticed how much the audience appreciated this. Once in the mid-1960s, the theatre decided to organize, at the big town stadium, a grand-scale show entitled Shakespeareana. Opera artists from all across the Soviet Union were invited to take part. They assembled 25 Othellos, as many Juliets and Hamlets. There was Richard the Lionheart with his cavalry. No one had ever seen them all together in one mind-boggling extravaganza and did not want to see them. The stadium was almost empty, while the theatre, which, as they would have said before in pre-revolutionary times, had footed the expenses, went bankrupt. On the next day they summoned me to the director's office and, aware of my popularity with the public, requested me to give several solo performances. They offered me the best venues and asked me, "What will you perform?" "What do you mean by asking me what will I perform? Of course the Russian romance," I announced bravely.
The directorship in the theatre had no objections to that. The theatre's financial situation was drastic, requiring salvaging, so ideology was put on the back burner for a while. Галине Каревой was happy at the opportunity that had presented itself to bring people such pleasure. She rushed to seek out sheet music of long-forgotten romances. As she later wrote in her autobiography,
I didn't yet know neither music nor lyrics, so I worked day and night preparing, and, oh miracle, the concert enjoyed more than a capacity crowd. I was thus able to bring relief to the strained financial situation of the theatre, for which I received due gratitude, but most importantly, that was when I realized that the romance genre was the one for me.
the autumn wind mournfully wails, the faded leaves whirl round in protest. The heart succumbs to pangs of languish, a yearning for the happiness now lost.
Жалобно стонет ветер осенний, листья кружатся облегшие, сердце наполнилось чувством утомления, вспомнились годы ушедшие. Вспомнилось все, ушло безвозвратно в юности дни быстротечные, и не вернуть мне былого обратно ласки твои бесконечные.
Галина Каревой similarly came to the theatre's rescue on other occasions too, giving solo concerts of old Russian romances, and gradually, as she wrote in her autobiography,
I conceived a two-part evening of the romance. The very first concert was a box office hit. Equal success accompanied the second and then the third concerts. And then I performed romances on the Kirov theatre stage and practically on all concert venues of the town.
Galina Karevой approached the genre of romance with great seriousness, as was her custom in everything she undertook. She studied the genre at length, read materials about the history of the romance in general, and the Russian one in particular, listening to recordings of the performers of old. In one of her interviews to the press, she said of the romance,
"The Russian romance is over 150 years old. They really love the genre in our country. This love is explained by the fact that the Russian romances express the true Russian soul, the Russian character, in the same way that folk songs do. Through the depths of centuries they convey to us the world of our great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, their sentiments and their innermost dreams. The old Russian romance is a fascinating, unique genre which enables a singer to fully bear one's soul, and at the same time it's a difficult genre. In the romance it is up to you to interpret what you're performing. This is a test of one's culture level and mirrors one's true self beyond concealment. Edith Piaf once said, "There are many singers, but show me a true personality." The romance induces the audience to empathize because the romance invariably portrays a part of someone's life, that of the performer, the composer, or perhaps the poet. There is something of the Chekhov miniature in a romance where, from 2-3 pages, you learn the life story of the character, their inner world, their destiny, perhaps their tragedy. Similarly, the romance is like a short novella, a play acted out before the audience, complete with beginning, culmination, and conclusion. What is it that attracts drama actors and actresses to the romance genre, even if they do not possess ample vocal talent? Of course, it's the drama component they feel they can relate to. From a melodic aspect, the romance is constructed most amenably. It offers the performer ample opportunity for showing what one is capable of. For example, when I sing an opera, I'm naturally restricted by the limits of the entire composition. The romance exists independently. You're welcome to interpret it in any way you wish. When performing a romance, I aim not so much to illustrate its contents, but rather to shed light on its emotional essence. I carefully nurture the musical image of every romance, working on it for months, sometimes years. I search for new shades, trying to imbue old romances with a fresh radiance.
Он говорил мне, будь ты моею, и стану жить я страстью сгорая, прелесть улыбки, нега во взоре мне обещают радости рая. Бедному сердцу так говорил он, бедному сердцу так говорил он, но не любил он, нет, не любил он, нет, не любил он, ах, не любил меня.
An excerpt from the romance by Alfonso Guercia to the lyrics of poet Medvedev, No, He Did Not Love. A romance about betrayal in love. Галина Каревой said in one of the interviews,
The romance is a bright page in the history of our music culture, and one should make ample way for it. The best classical samples combine artistic superiority and nobility with ingenious musical form.
However, ideological watchdogs of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, who watched rather hawk-eyed over the tastes espoused by the population of this country, had no intention of granting the green light to the romance. The genre was labelled bourgeois, trite, vulgar, and decadent. Those who performed romances were warned off their repertoire, persistently encouraged to adopt a more revolutionary tonality and do justice to the socio-political themes. Art was supposed to serve politics, after all. That is when Галина Каревой took on the challenge of popularizing the old Russian romance. She was a trailblazer, battling against the political current of the time. Not only did she come under verbal attacks of the ideological opponents of the genre, but generally all those eager to kowtow to the powers that be. The latter were represented by partisan media and critics, unsuccessful composers, motley bootlickers, and those who stuck off the concert programs just in case anything that might offended the authorities and put themselves in disfavor. Resorting to various cunning subterfuge and even open conflict, Галина Каревой sang what she wanted. She was a daring person who knew no fear. Thus there was this incident in 1965 that the singer's sister Olga, a witness of those events, recalled.
Галина Каревой's concert was to take place at the Oktyabrski Concert Hall, seating 4,000. That day she received a telephone call from the Culture Department where she was advised in no uncertain terms to include popular Soviet songs in her upcoming concert. Galina tried to explain why she couldn't do this, that the Soviet songs did not conform with the overall theme of the concert, made up of old Russian romances. However, the voice on the other end of the line seemed oblivious to all her protests and persistently continued in the same vein, stressing the tasks faced by the party and so on and so forth. And finally she was told that unless she complied with the demands, her concert would be cancelled altogether. To which she responded, "So be it. Cancel it. You live by the rules of the party, while I follow the call of the arts." And she hung up.
They never did cancel the concert, and Галина Каревой was never plagued by such advice again. However, they did attempt to exert influence on the directors of the concert halls where she performed. They accused them of being forgetful of their ideological responsibilities. However, the success of Karevой's concerts was so overwhelming, the directors of the concert venues daren't give up such a profitable source of income. Thus, in Moscow, huge crowds of those wanting to attend Karevой's concerts had to be subdued by mounted militia. Halls were packed by thousands of her fans, thus demonstrating their support for the genre of Russian romance and its right to exist on the variety stage unhampered. Eventually, the popular will overrode the ideological clampdowns. Thanks to Галине Каревой and her numerous fans, the old Russian romance was saved from oblivion.
Все призрачно, туманно, как наших чувств пленительный обман. Мы странно встретились, и ты уйдешь нежданно, как в путь уходит караван. Так иногда в томительной пустыне мелькают образы далеких чудных
there we end another edition of Voice of Russia Treasure Store, dedicated to the 80th birth anniversary of wonderful Russian singer, people's artist of Russia, Галина Каревой, who died in 1990. The program was directed by Vladimir Dermin, author and music editor Tatiana Shvetsova, sound engineer Nadezhda Smirnova, and your hosts, Pavel Novichkov
and Svetlana Yakimenko. We wish you all the best.
And in conclusion, let's listen to a 1960s recording made at one of Галины Каревой's concerts of old Russian romance. We wish to apologize for the quality of the recording.
Он уехал.
Зимний хлад, он уехал ненаглядный, не вернется он назад. Не слыхать мне песен звонких и восторженных речей. Он уехал, а слезы льются из очей. Расцветет природа вновь, все воскреснет, оживится, не вернется лишь любовь. И весна мне не на радость, коль зима в душе моей. Он уехал,
And there we end another edition of the Voice of Russia Treasure Store. Tune in same time next week. All the best to you.